Hey everybody, it's me, Lance Max Viking. It's been a while since I've done a video. I apologize for that. I have been very busy. Well, we're all very busy. And it's kind of unfortunate too because I've got a lot of stuff going on as far as like gaming going on, which I want to talk to you guys about. But the big thing is that we've been playing a Delta Green game for the month of October for Spooky Month, and we're wrapping that up. There's probably going to be maybe one more session before we get done with it. And I really want to share that information with you and share how that went. It's the first time I run Delta Green. I mean, it's got a lot of hands in the Call of Cthulhu world, so it's kind of the same deal with some mechanism differences, of course. But we've been having a lot of fun playing that. The D&D game will pick up as soon as that is done, and so I'll get back to doing those reports as well. But today is Spooky Week, right before Halloween. I wanted to put together a few videos this week just to talk about some spooky things that I like, and hopefully you can tell me about some spooky things that you like. I'm going to tell a couple of ghost stories at some point, things that have actually happened to me that, kind of defy, well, I can explain them, but still they were kind of spooky and they were kind of weird. But regardless of anything, I'm here to talk about the top 5 short stories that creep me out in one way or another. Sometimes, like when you read a longer scary story, there's creepy moments in it, but then it kind of it completes itself, if you will. And you kind of get to go the whole width and breadth of all of your emotions and how scared you are as read it. And I remember reading some of these short stories when I was younger and actually getting scared reading them, usually because I was like at my dad's house in the basement right before going to bed, almost no lights on, spooky, scary stuff like that. That tends to let your mind wander and when you're all alone. But as I've gotten older, obviously, spooky, scary things just don't really spooky and scary me very much anymore. I mean, I get worried, I guess, for the well-being of my family, well-being of my friends. But as far as like thinking that ghosts and goblins are coming to consume me or devour my brain or anything like that, that doesn't really happen. So these are 5 stories that I have read, and either I read them when I was younger or I read them fairly recently, and just some aspect of it kind of just freaked me out. And I'm going to try to have as little spoilers as possible. In some cases, I'm going to have to give away a little bit of stuff. So if you want to just skip to the description below, I can just list them off. And these aren't in any particular order. At some point, I might read another short story. I might think, oh, that was more spooky than this. But these are just 5 that kind of stood out for me. And these are 5 that I would suggest to anybody to just check out. And the nice thing about short stories are, maybe, I don't know what the clinical term for the length of a short story is, maybe 100 pages or less. But this is something that you can consume. And I think you can find most of these things online, just to be able to read it on a book reader or, relatively cheap as far as that goes. All right. Anyway, I'm all over the place. I'm just going to start off with, I still remember the very first time somebody said, oh, you like ghost stories? You should really read this stuff by this guy, M.R. James. And this was, I was a teenager. I think I was, and I don't remember who told me that. It was somebody there was this gamers group that we played D&D once a month, and it was called the Gamers Guild. It was in the local Fargo Moorhead area. And we I was part of that, and I remember like that was the first time I ever played Call of Cthulhu. And I remember talking about ghost stories and how much liked reading like Stephen King. And they said you should really check out. Of course, they told me to check out Lovecraft, and then they also said track down the ghost stories of M.R. James and read those. And since we actually had the where we met for the Gamers Guild was in the basement of the Moorhead Public Library. Uh, we I was able to go upstairs and I looked it up, and this is pull out the big card catalog. I'm typing it away on like a computer, but I was able to like go there and like find a big book of his, and most of his books are in collections, and I was able to sit down and read them. And some of his stuff was hit or miss. I mean, I will say that M.R. James has a lot of, um, like, because of the era that it was written, it is it isn't as current as far as scariness goes. And there's a lot of famous stories that people really like. Count Magnus, Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad, just off the top of my head thinking of. But the one story that like really, really creeped me out was the story 13, which very basically is the story of this person who is traveling, like they're an antiquarian, because this is that's an era when M.R. James was writing. That was something people were, and I mean I'm sure there are still antiquarians around now, but I mean back then it was a a more of a, I don't know what it was a hobby slash occupation that people pursued. I think I would presume on a greater deal, because remember these stories were written over 100 years ago in some cases. So uh, um, most of them actually. But anyway, regardless, 13 tells the story of this antiquarian who travels, and I forget what the exact town, but um, res- gets a room at this local inn, and has room 14. And they happen to notice that on the board, which has all the keys on it, this is before key cards and stuff like that actually handed you a physical key. He's looking on the board of all the keys, and he notices that there's no number 13 at the inn. There's no room 13, but he gets room 14. I think he actually like kind of like purposely picks room 14 because it has a view of the street or something along those lines. And he goes up to his room, and it's a nice room. It's big, it's spacious. He very much enjoys it. And one of the things he notices, because he likes to look out on the street, is he likes to look out at like at the people going by, and as night falls, the light within his room casts, like the light shines from behind him, and then the light casts out onto the street, and so he can kind of see himself in a silhouette standing in front of the window, and then he can see there is a person staying in the room to his left, and they appear to be, writing at a desk or something. I don't remember exactly, but very curiously, he notices that there is a light shining from a room next door, but there is no room next door, and so he's like, well, that's really weird. But he said maybe it's a trick of light, and so then of course he goes to sleep. But then as he's sleeping, he realizes he feels like his room is shrinking. It isn't as big as it appeared before. And I don't want to dive too much because it's a really, really good story as far as like there appears to be a mysterious room 13 at the inn, and he starts to investigate that. And that's all I'll say. It is super creepy. It definitely holds true to M.R. James, who said that the ghosts have to be um, uh, nefarious. They have to be uh, they have to be malevolent. They can't be a good-natured spirit trying to help people. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, M.R. James, 13, read it. It's great stuff. Okay, my next one is, and this is kind of a popular one. I remember I read this in I think it was middle school or high school. And to think of it, why were we asked to read this short story by Joyce Carol Oates? And that is, Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? And I don't know why they had us read this. Looking back, it seems like such a horrible decision on behalf of the curriculum at the time. But it deals with child abduction, and it deals with creepy domination themes and mind control themes over this young girl who is dealing with someone who is trying to persuade them to basically get in their car and leave with them. And it is, uh, again, if you're watching this, you may have read it. It's been a few years since I read it. I picked up an anthology of like I was at a used bookstore and I found an anthology of a bunch of horror fiction, like a big giant thick book, that has a bunch of short stories inside, and that was one of them. So and I remember I started reading it because I was like, where have I seen this before? And then it kind of clicked, like my reading class in junior high, like eighth grade or something like that. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember reading this. I remember thinking, this is, even when I was like, 14 years old, I was like, I probably shouldn't be reading this. This is some serious stuff here. So, but yeah, it still stuck with me, and it gave me this creepy feeling of dread that has stuck with me ever since. And when I reread it a few years ago, I remember feeling that old, young dread kind of creeping up out of the back of my brain and showing up. So, definitely creepy, and like, I mean, I've never looked in. I mean, I know Joyce Carol Oates was a very prolific writer, but I'm sure there's other creepy horror stuff that they've written. I should probably look into that, but I never have. All right. So the next one, this was suggested to me back in high school, or shortly after high school. And I had read some Harlan Ellison, and somehow, for whatever reason, I never got around to reading I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. And the reason why I read it was because there was a computer game that came out with that same name. And I remember saying that was a really cool name. And a friend of mine said, my friend Brandon said, it's a story. You should really read it. And man, I did, and it totally flip things for me. This idea of artificial intelligence getting some sort of omnipotence, and then um, hating its creators to the point where they begins torturing them, and torturing them in ways that they have no way to escape. And it is not an easy. I mean, I should say it's not an it's an easy read because it's Harlan Ellison, but it is not an easy read. You definitely find yourself putting yourself into the same position as the people that are in the stories, and you definitely get into those feelings of like, oh my gosh, this is, ugh, this is awful. It is probably, of this list, it's probably the best known one. I think, I mean, obviously Harlan Ellison is known for a lot of things. Not, I mean, for, perhaps writing the greatest Star Trek episode of all time. But this might be one of those, if you say seminal works, I mean, this is one of those things where I think people talk about that a great deal. The reason it's on this list, and I tried to get kind of vague with this list, I wanted to have stuff that maybe wasn't a little bit off the beaten path. The reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to kind of maybe show, like, it even though it's like one of the most popular of this list, I still think there's a lot of people out there that haven't. And of course, with the emergence of AI and the emergence of this is kind of a thing. I mean, people are like futurists are talking about the possibility of an AI gaining awareness and having malevolence, you know, and so I think it is kind of I mean, not like a warning or anything like that, but I do think it's very timely right now. So if you haven't read it, I strongly suggest picking up and reading that short story. I have no mouth and I must scream. All right, so I mean, I had to pick one Stephen King short story, and there's so many. I am a big fan of Stephen King's compilations of short stories, much more so than his longer novels. I would say I've read 75% of his work. But whenever he has a short story collection or a novella collection, I always will pick that up, and I will always read it, and I go back to those and I reread them over and over again. And there's just so many to pick. I mean, you can go. I mean, I would say I take like the Boogeyman, but anytime they've tried to make a movie of that, it's horrible. So that kind of soiled me a little bit on it. I mean, that's like a really creepy story. You know, I mean, the Quitters Incorporated, that's a creepy story. I mean, I if I rack my brain, I'd be Crouch End, another creepy story. I Am the Doorway, another creepy story. I mean, he's so good at writing a short story that presents a horrible situation and how you figure it. But for me, the one I picked, even though I could have picked any of them really, the one I picked is The Man in the Black Suit. I remember reading this when I was young. I think it was in the 90s when this was written. I remember reading it in the basement of my dad's house where I read a lot of these things because my parents got divorced when I was very young. And when I got to the age where I was still hanging out with my dad every other weekend, both of my siblings were old enough that they were not basically joining me at my dad's house. They had other things going on. So I kind of liked it. I was able to hang out with my dad. We made a lot of frozen pizzas. We watched a lot of movies on VHS tapes. At that point, he was remarried, and I actually had younger brothers, and so I would hang out with them. And but so the Man in the Black Suit tells the story of a young boy who decides he's going to go fishing at the creek or whatever, and then while he's there, and he's recently had a tragedy where his brother was stung by a bee, and because he was allergic to bee stings, it killed him. And so he goes down to the river, and I'm not going to tell most of this, but he basically meets this man that in a black suit who very shortly the child realizes that the man is actually the devil, and yeah, I'll just kind of leave it at that. It is. I remember when I read it, I remember the way that Stephen King, like a lot of times when you watch a movie and it's like you meet the devil, it's like, you know, like they're always presented in some like, oh, aren't I just like this, you know, they're evil, but they're like this seductive evil, right? You know, they're like, oh, you know, it's like I could offer you all of this, I could do all of this for you. And it's almost like it's like they romanticize this being of pure evil, right? But in this story, it's the Man in the Black Suit. He is pure evil, and he is malevolent, and he is horrible. And it is a situation where it tells the story of him running into the devil. The devil is scary and cruel and murderous, and the story ends on a wonderful, wonderful note. That this not a lingering like what happens kind of note, but definitely a lingering moment of dread. Something that Stephen King is very, very good at. So, The Man in the Black Suit. That's the one. And the last one I'm going to mention, and this is one that I stumbled upon relatively recently. This was one I don't know where I found out about it. It was online. I'm reading some like short story list or something like that. And I was aware of this writer, but to be fair, this writer is very, very, even though he is renowned for the stuff that he's written, he doesn't write a lot. And that is Ted Klein, or T.E.D. Klein, who's written, who has a body of work, and his body of work is very, very well regarded. But his body of work is quite small for somebody who's been writing for decades. And the story that I want to talk about, and it actually was in that anthology that I found before, and I picked it up again recently because sometimes when you pick up an anthology, it's like, that one doesn't really interest me, that one doesn't really interest me, and then you pick it up again, and then you're like, oh, I'll read this short story, and I hadn't read that portion, but it's just The Events at Porth Farm is what it's called. And I don't want to give away too much on this one either. I remember after reading it, I had to just tell my wife about the story just because it was super, super creepy and has some super, super creepy moments. And super creepy moments that involve pets, like when people have these beloved pets and something creepy happens with the pet. That's something that like spooks people, right? Have you ever been in your house and you have a dog or a cat or something like that, and all of a sudden they like stare at the wall for no reason, and they growl, or they kind of like look like they're scared, like the hair goes up on the back of their back, or like there was a room, and I'll talk more about this later, but I remember I went over to I had a buddy who lived in this old. He lived in an apartment that was part of this old. I don't want to give away too much here, but basically, it was a converted from a hospital, and they had made like a small clinic had been converted into apartments, and he lived in one of those. And there was one room. I would sometimes bring my dog with me when I went to go visit him, and there was one room in his apartment, and he had a big spacious apartment, but there was like one room where my dog would stop, and at the open door, dark in there, and he would just sit there and he would just stare into the dark, and he wouldn't go in the room. He would go in if you dragged him, basically, but he wouldn't go in the room. So that's like spooky stuff, right? Like, what are they seeing? What are they noticing? That who knows, right? It doesn't matter, but it's weird. But regardless to all of that, Events of Porth Farm is about this gentleman who is going to go and live as a boarder on this farm where this married couple is, and he's going to go there because he needs to basically get all this reading done, because he's going to be doing a bunch of research. He's going to, like, it's the summer, he's going to go and he's going to read all these books to do with this research, so that when he goes back to school in the fall, he'll have read all of these things, he'll have annotated them, he'll have gotten through it all, and then he'll be able to do it. And of course, he's got a little boarding house that is apart from the main house of the where the farmhouse is. And of course, at night, he hears weird things. He starts seeing insects that are way too big for their size. When he goes for walks in the woods, he starts encountering things that are just creepy and not really natural, I guess. And it definitely gives you Cthulhu vibes, right? Without coming out and saying it's like Shub Niggurath or anything like that. It doesn't involve itself into the Cthulhu mythos, but it definitely gives you these otherworldly Cthulhu vibes and this existential dread, if you will. And it is the classic way of saying, because it starts off with the the gentleman that went to stay at the farm is sitting in a hotel room, and he is writing these things down. It's his affidavit of what happened, is what he says, and he's writing this while this paranoia of like looking out onto the street, and he's like looking at the people and looking at the people, and he's getting paranoid about like seeing the same people on the street over and over again, and there's a lot of this like feeling of something bad, something really bad is going to happen. And that's why they need to write this stuff out before it's too late, before something bad happens to them. And which is a classic trope, but it works really, really well. Now, I'm aware, for those of you who know, that Ted Klein did take this idea, the events at Porth Farm, and he did take it and make it into the basic story of it, and he expanded into a novel called The Ceremonies, which I have read. But in my opinion, that it definitely, like, it was one of those things I could see the mindset of it. Like, I wrote this really, really good, like 40-50 page story that like definitely is a page turner and people devoured it. Now, what can I do to take this story and turn it into a 500-page novel? And it, by no means, The Ceremonies is still really good, but in my mind, it doesn't. The whole less is more. I feel like the events at Porth Farm definitely hit home quicker and faster. There's one line in the novel, and this is, I mean, it's just I don't want to give spoilers, but the one line that made me go just like shudder is like, "Sometimes I forget to blink," is a line from the story, and man, that just made me shiver when I read it. So you're not gonna be able to really probably find a hard copy of Events at Porth Farm unless you like. There's several anthologies that have it in it. The cheapest one, I was looking to see if I could find an actual like copy of it. I'd love to have a just of that alone. But there's like American Supernatural Tales or something like that is a compilation that, like, if you go on to a used bookstore database like a Libris, you can find a copy of it for like $4. So if you want to, and plus you get a bunch of other stories too. But I would, if you are a fan of Cthulhu and existential stuff and Lovecraft and whatever, track that down and read it. I'd strongly suggest it. All right, so there you go. There's 5 cool little short horror stories that I really, really like. If you've got a cool short horror story and you think you can, like, tell me about it, I'd love to hear about it below. Tell me. So it's something I can check out. And if you've read any of the 5 that I mentioned, tell me what you thought of them as well. Until next time, hopefully it's another one later this week. This is me telling you, have a great day, be the best version of yourself that you possibly can be, and enjoy the spooky season. Ooh.